Say hi. Today we are going to walk through the 7 rarest ancient DNA specimens on Earth. Each one is more impossible than the last. And by the end, you'll meet the single rarest human lineage ever confirmed. One so rare that fewer than 100 humans alive today carry it. Before we start, I need you to understand something. When you think about ancient DNA, you probably picture something in a museum, a skull behind glass, a thigh bone in a drawer. But the actual DNA inside those bones, that's a different thing entirely. That's information, a code, a story that got written once and then got buried. And in almost every case, that story got erased. Weather ate it, microbes consumed it, time dissolved it. The vast majority of ancient humans left zero genetic trace. Their DNA is just gone. So the specimens we're about to talk about are not just rare. They're survivors. They're the ones that made it. And each one carries something no other specimen on Earth carries. A lineage that vanished. A hybrid that shouldn't exist. A pair of blue eyes and a face nobody expected. And at the very end, a Y chromosome older than our entire species. So here's your first one. Number 7. Cheddar Man. He's 10,000 years old. He was discovered in Somerset, England in 1903 inside a cave called Gough's Cave in the Cheddar Gorge. And for more than a century, he sat in a museum as a skeleton. Just bones. Nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody knew what color his skin was, what color his eyes were, what ancestry he carried. And then, in 2018, researchers led by a team publishing in Nature Ecology and Evolution, Brace and colleagues, managed to sequence his genome. And what they found broke a lot of brains. Cheddar Man had blue eyes and dark skin, very dark skin, darker than most modern Europeans. Dark enough that if you saw him walking down a street today, you'd likely assume he was from somewhere entirely different. And for a while, the internet lost its mind. Because for decades, the popular image of Ice Age Europe was basically a bunch of pale, light-skinned hunter-gatherers. It was the default, the illustration in every textbook. And then this 10,000-year-old man from England turns out to have dark skin and blue eyes. And suddenly that default image isn't just wrong, it's backwards. The reason this matters? It told us something about how human skin color actually evolved. Light skin in Europe, the version most associated with modern Europeans. It's not ancient, it's recent. It arrived with later migrations. The hunter-gatherers of Western Europe, the ones who lived there for thousands of years, carried different variants. Darker skin, lighter eyes in some cases. And Cheddar Man is one of the best preserved windows into that vanished world. His Y DNA is haplogroup I2A2. That lineage still exists today, but it's not dominant. It's a leftover. And here's the wildest part. About 10% of modern British ancestry traces back to his group. Not to him directly, obviously, to the population he belonged to. So when you walk through Britain today, you are walking past people who carry a tiny echo of a man who lived 10,000 years ago, in a cave, with dark skin and blue eyes. That's the starting point. That's the least rare item on this list. And it already changes how you see a country. Now we're getting into serious territory. Number 6. Ötzi the Iceman. 5,300 years old. Found in 1991, in the Ötztal Alps, on the border between Austria and Italy. 2 hikers saw something sticking out of the ice. They thought it was a recent body. It wasn't. It was a man who lived and died before the pyramids went up in Egypt. And because a glacier had swallowed him, his body was preserved in a way that almost no other ancient human body has ever been preserved. You don't get this from a dry cave or a bog. You get this from ice. Deep, cold, complete ice. His full genome was sequenced in 2012, published in Nature Communications by Keller and colleagues. And what they found was a man with brown eyes, blood type O, and lactose intolerance. He couldn't digest milk as an adult, which makes complete sense, because dairy farming hadn't reached his part of the world yet. He had 61 tattoos. Not decorative tattoos, therapeutic ones. Small lines and crosses placed on joints and along his spine. Exactly where you'd expect someone with chronic pain to receive treatment. He had an arrow wound in his shoulder that killed him. And when researchers analyzed the contents of his stomach, they found his last meal. Ibex meat, einkorn wheat, a bit of venison. He ate, and then he died. Violently. But here's the rarity part. His Y DNA is haplogroup G2A, and G2A is nearly extinct in modern Europe. Barely 1% of European men today carry anything close to it. the lineage didn't just shrink, it got almost completely replaced. The agricultural revolution rolled over Europe, and the men who were there before largely vanished from the genetic record. Otzi is one of the last remaining windows into that pre-replacement world. He is not just a frozen body, he is a genetic ghost of a Europe that no longer exists. And we only have him because a glacier happened to catch him at the exact right moment, 5,300 years ago, and hold on. Now let's leave the last 10,000 years entirely. Number 5. The Denisova finger bone. This one is between 50,000 and 70,000 years old. It was found in Denisova cave in Siberia, and what they found was not a skeleton, not a skull, not even a tooth. It was a fragment of a finger bone. That's it. A piece so small you could lose it in a pocket. And from that single fragment, researchers identified an entirely new species of archaic human. A species no one had ever seen before. A species that had no name until that moment. And that moment came in 2010, when Reich and colleagues published in Nature, and the Denisovans entered science. Let that sink in. Before 2010, the human family tree had two well-known archaic branches in Eurasia, Neanderthals and us. And then someone sequenced a piece of finger bone from a Siberian cave, and boom, there was a third branch. A branch that lived across vast stretches of Asia. A branch that interbred with us. A branch whose DNA survives in modern humans today, especially in Melanesians, in Aboriginal Australians, in some East Asian populations. All of that from one finger bone. The physical record of Denisovans is absurdly tiny. There are only about 6 physical fossils known worldwide. 6. Compare that to Neanderthals, where we have hundreds of specimens. Denisovan physical remains are so rare that each one is a small miracle. And the finger bone is the one that started everything. It is the reason we know they existed at all. Without that bone, the Denisovans would still be invisible. A ghost lineage hidden inside our genomes with no name. That's rarity. That's looking at a piece of finger and realizing it holds an entire world. Number 4. Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, Atapuerca, Spain. Around 430,000 years old. This is not a person, this is a site, a deep pit inside a cave system where ancient humans, or pre-humans, deposited their dead, and the DNA that came out of that pit is the oldest human nuclear DNA ever sequenced, ever, from the entire Homo genus. Nothing older has been sequenced, nothing even close. And here's the weird part. The DNA wasn't extracted from human bones, not directly. It was extracted from cave bear fossils found buried in the same pit. Because DNA doesn't care about the boundaries of your body. It leaks, it moves. It mixes with the sediment, and after hundreds of thousands of years, the genetic material of the hominins and the genetic material of the cave bears and the sediment all become one massive, degraded soup. And a team led by Meyer, publishing in Nature in 2016, pulled that soup apart and found human DNA inside it. Nuclear DNA, not just mitochondrial. Nuclear. The full library, or at least enough of it to read the core narrative. What they found was that these people were proto-Neanderthals, an early population ancestral to the classic Neanderthals who came later. And this was huge, because it confirmed the deep ancestry of the Neanderthal lineage in Europe. But the real headline is the age. 430,000 years. That's not just ancient. That's almost incomprehensible. Modern humans as a species didn't exist at that point. Not anatomically modern ones. The Cima hominins were alive nearly 200,000 years before the first Homo sapiens appeared. And we have their DNA. We can read it. We can compare it to our own. 430,000 years of time collapsed into a data file. No other site on Earth comes close. Number 3. The ancient Beringian infant. Her name, given by the local Athabascan community, is Zaksha Tean T. Gai. It means sunrise girl child. She was found at a site called Upward Sun River in Alaska. She is 11,500 years old. And she represents a lost lineage of Native Americans, a population called the ancient Beringians. And no living population carries her exact ancestry pattern, none. The study, by Moreno Mayar and colleagues, was published in Nature in 2018, and the finding was this. The ancestors of Native Americans split from other East Asian populations around 20,000 years ago. But then, before those ancestors moved south into the Americas, there was another split. One branch stayed in the north, in Beringia, that vast, now drowned land bridge between Siberia and Alaska. That branch is the ancient Beringians. The other branch moved south and became the ancestors of all modern Native American groups, from Alaska to the tip of South America. The Sunrise Girl Child belonged to the branch that stayed. She lived and died in Alaska, with a genetic signature that would soon vanish. The ancient Beringians didn't leave a direct modern population. They were absorbed, replaced, outlasted. Her DNA is a snapshot of a world that existed for maybe a few thousand years and then disappeared. And we only know about it because a tiny infant, she was about 6 weeks old, was buried carefully with grave goods, and the permafrost held her genome for 11,500 years. That's not just rare, that's heartbreaking. Now we're at number 2, Deni. And Deni is something that shouldn't exist. She's roughly 90,000 years old. She was found in Denisova cave, same cave as the finger bone, and her DNA, published in Nature in 2018 by Sloan and colleagues, revealed something no one had ever seen before. Deni was a first-generation hybrid. Her mother was a Neanderthal, her father was a Denisovan, not a distant ancestor, not a trace percentage. Her mother was a Neanderthal, her father was a Denisovan. 2 different archaic human species met, had a child, and that child's bones survived for 90,000 years. That child is Deni. Think about the odds. First, a Neanderthal and a Denisovan had to encounter each other. Then they had to produce offspring. Then that offspring had to die young. She was around 13, in or near a cave that would preserve her remains. Then that cave had to survive tens of thousands of years of freeze-thaw cycles, erosion, animal activity, and eventually human research. And then the exact right bone fragment had to be selected for DNA analysis. And the DNA had to be intact enough to sequence. And after all of that, the result had to show a clear, unambiguous first-generation hybrid signature. All of that happened. Once. That's the entire known record. One individual. One girl. The only first-generation hybrid between 2 archaic human species ever confirmed anywhere on Earth. There are people today with Neanderthal DNA. There are people today with Denisovan DNA. But those admixture events happened tens of thousands of years ago, then got diluted and recombined across hundreds of generations. Deni is the raw event. She is the exact moment of mixing, frozen in bone. And as far as anyone knows, she is unique. There is no second Deni. If there are more first-generation hybrids out there, they haven't been found. And they may never be found. That's how rare this is. You're looking at the only known example in the entire hominin fossil record. And now, number 1. This one is different. Everything we've talked about so far has been a fossil, a bone, a body. But the rarest ancient DNA on Earth isn't in a cave. It's in living people right now. And you've already walked past some of them. The story begins with a family in South Carolina. They submitted an ancestry DNA test. Nothing special. Millions of people do that. But when the results came back, the Y chromosome didn't match anything in the database. Not just unusual. It didn't match anything. The lab checked again. Still nothing. The sample was sent to researchers. And in 2013, a team led by Mendez published a paper in the American Journal of Human Genetics that fundamentally altered our understanding of human origins. The Y chromosome this family carried is haplogroup A00, and here's what that means. Y DNA is passed from father to son, basically unchanged except for small mutations. Those mutations accumulate over time. By comparing the mutations in different men's Y chromosomes, you can build a family tree of every man alive. And that tree has a root, Y chromosomal Adam, the most recent common ancestor of all living men. Before this South Carolina family tested, Y chromosomal Adam was estimated to live around 200,000 years ago, give or take. Then A00 showed up, and the entire tree had to be redrawn, because A00 diverged from every other Y chromosome on Earth 338,000 years ago. Let me say that again, 338,000 years. That's not a typo, that's not an exaggeration. The lineage split from all other known male lineages 138,000 years before the previous estimate of Y chromosomal Adam. And here's the part that breaks your brain. Homo sapiens as an anatomically modern species? We didn't exist 338,000 years ago. The earliest anatomically modern fossils are around 300,000 years old. This Y chromosome is older than our species. It existed before Homo sapiens. It survived through whatever population transitions gave rise to our species. And somehow, it is still being passed from father to son today, in living men, right now, on this planet. The A00 lineage was traced to the Embo people of Cameroon, a group in western Cameroon. And the confirmed number of living carriers today is fewer than 100 men. Fewer than 100, out of 4 billion men on Earth. Let me put that in perspective. If you gathered every man alive and removed all of them except A00 carriers, the remaining group wouldn't fill a high school gymnasium. And those men are carrying a lineage that predates Homo sapiens. A lineage that has been passed from father to son for more than 300,000 years. That is not a fossil. That is a living thread, unbroken, stretched across the entire history of our genus. And you could meet one of them. You could shake his hand. You could stand next to a man whose Y chromosome existed before humanity existed. That is the single rarest Y chromosome ancestry ever confirmed. That is the single rarest ancient DNA on Earth. Now, full transparency. Rarest is subjective. There are different ways to measure rarity. Some specimens are rarer in terms of physical remains. Some are rarer in terms of DNA preservation. Some are rarer in terms of what they represent. Y-DNA A00 is rare in Y chromosome terms, the male line. It says nothing about the rest of the genome of the men who carry it. Their other chromosomes are just as modern and mixed as anyone else's. So when we say the rarest ancient DNA on Earth, we're talking about a specific lineage, a specific marker, passed down through a single, unbroken chain. Other measurements might rank other specimens higher. There's no single correct answer. But in terms of a living lineage that cannot be replicated, that exists nowhere else, that predates our own species, and that currently sits in the bodies of fewer than 100 men alive today, there is nothing else like it. Not a finger bone, not a frozen body, not a hybrid child. This is the one. And that brings me to the larger point. Every specimen we've walked through today is non-renewable. You can't dig up another Denisova finger bone. The Denisova finger bone has been sequenced. Its genome exists in databases now, but that's a copy. The physical substance is gone, consumed by analysis or degraded over time. You can't find another Denny. The conditions that produced her are astronomically unlikely. You can't find another sunrise girl child. The ancient Beringian population is extinct. You can't find another Cima de los Huesos site. It's one pit in one cave in Spain, and the DNA survived because of a freak combination of cold, depth, and sediment chemistry. What survives is a fraction of what existed. That's the real story. The human family tree didn't have 7 branches. It had hundreds, thousands. We know the names of a few: Neanderthals, Denisovans, ancient Beringians, Proto-Neanderthals of Cima, Cheddarman's Western hunter-gatherers, Otzi's early European farmers, the A00 lineage. But for every branch we can name, there are dozens we can't. They left no fossils, or their fossils were destroyed, or their DNA degraded beyond recovery, or no one has excavated the right cave in the right corner of the right continent yet. The genetic diversity of ancient humanity was enormous. What we've recovered is a few scraps from the floor of a vast banquet hall, and we are walking through those scraps now, one by one, trying to reconstruct the shape of the table. Every time a new ancient genome gets sequenced, the story gets bigger. Cheddarman rewrote how we see Ice Age Europe. Otzi rewrote how we see Neolithic Europe. The Denisova fingerbone rewrote the human family tree. Cima pushed the timeline back by hundreds of thousands of years. The sunrise girl child revealed a population no one knew existed. Denny proved that archaic human species met and mixed, not in some abstract population-level event, but in the body of one specific girl whose mother and father belonged to different species. And A00 revealed that some lineages are so old they make a mockery of our species' boundaries. This is not a static story. It's not over. The next rarest ancient DNA specimen may be sitting in a museum drawer somewhere, mislabeled, waiting for the right sequencing technology. Or it may be living inside someone who just sent a cheek swab to a DNA testing company and hasn't checked their results yet. That's why this matters. Not just because it's interesting science, but because these specimens are irreplaceable windows into what we were. Each one lights up a small piece of the human story. And when they're gone, degraded, consumed, lost, they're gone forever. The information they hold doesn't come back. So when you look at that list of 7, Cheddarman, Otzi, the Denisova fingerbone, the Cima de los Huesos hominins, the Sunrise Girl Child, Deni, and the A00 lineage. You are looking at 7 miracles of preservation. 7 moments where deep time reached forward and tapped us on the shoulder and said, "Here. Look, remember." And the rarest of them isn't in a museum. It's in living men. A lineage older than our species. A thread that has never broken. Fewer than 100 carriers alive today. That's the single rarest ancient DNA on Earth. And it's still being passed on. Still moving forward. Still alive. And that's the complete list. 7 of the rarest ancient DNA specimens on Earth. If you found this journey worth taking, subscribe. There are more stories like this waiting. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Thanks for staying until the very end. Goodbye for now.